Well, first, would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Scott VanKoughnett. I'm the proprietor of My Words Bookstore in Northeast Minneapolis. It's been up and running for 7.5 years now. It's used books almost entirely, a couple of shelves of new books by local people.
Have you always been passionate about books, or did this came later in life for you?
Always been passionate. I started reading apparently when I was 3 or 4, and my mother says she doesn't know how I learned because she didn't teach me. And I had a great aunt who owned a bookstore in Chicago, and I got to run around there when I was little, and have been reading ever since, and probably wanted to open a bookstore since I was maybe 30, and I'm 70 now. So I finally got myself in a position where I could do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it your great aunt who inspired you to open your own bookstore?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, there's a picture of her on the wall over there, and it says "Our Founder," which isn't really true, but kind of in spirit. Mm-hmm. In spirit, it's true.
Where do you get your book supply from?
A few different places. I go to estate sales. I go to book sales either through the public libraries, because they have the Friends of the Library sales with donated books and retired library books, but there haven't been any for 1.5 years now. And there's other book sales out there too, benefit sales for like the Bloomington Fire Department and things like that. Or people will call me up to go look at the books in their house, or they'll bring them in to sell or sometimes to donate. And I pick which ones I want. No matter what it is out of there, I pick which ones I want. And if people are bringing them in, I'll either pay them or give them store credit, and they can accept my offer or not. Yeah, and I pick through it. I have an idea of what I want. And of course, there's always books I've never seen before that look interesting, and I'll take those too. Those are the main sources.
Do you base that off of your personal taste or what you think your customers would like?
Somewhere in between. It's what I think my customers should like. It's a little paternalistic in that way, but there's some things I won't sell. Some things I won't put on my shelves even though they would sell. Romance novels, for instance. Textbooks. Right this month I've been getting lots of calls of people looking for textbooks, but I don't carry those. Kind of the dividing line is, if you can buy it at the grocery store, I don't want it. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
What is your favorite thing about owning this shop?
If I were less of an introvert, I'd say it was meeting the people and talking to them. But I think it's really finding the books and matching them up with people. Somebody comes in here with kind of a vague idea what they want. The family they just left, they were looking for Beatrix Potter books, Peter Rabbit. I said, I just got in a book about Beatrix Potter's own garden, because apparently she had a fabulous garden. And so I've got that, and so I introduced them to that book that they didn't know about, and they bought that too. It was just something they didn't know existed, but was really just a perfect fit. Yeah, so that kind of thing I really love doing.
Mm-hmm. Did that grow as the more you owned, or the longer you've had this bookstore open, or was that instant thing you knew that was your favorite thing?
It grew. I mean, I knew there'd be some of that, but it's grown. I thought it'd be more just helping them find what they were already looking for, but now I'm helping them find things they didn't know they were looking for, and that's even more fun.
Do you guys host any events at your store?
Yes. During better times, we were doing a few a month. We did, this summer we've had 3. So we had 2 events last weekend, local authors, a reporter who did a book on UFOs, and a young doctor and she's like under 35. It was her memoir of having a brain tumor and having it removed and coming out on the other end very, very nicely. Most of what we get here are poetry readers. We get a group of 3 or 4 poets together. We've also had an open mic that was both music and writing. We've had other things here and there, but yeah, it's mainly a writer with a new book.
Is there a most memorable event you've had?
Yes. There's excuse me, cameras. Brian runs Cow Tipping Press. It's bigger and more professional looking than a zine, but it's not quite a book. All these are filled with writings by people who are developmentally disabled in some form or another. And Brian works with them, gets them to write something, and then he publishes them. Well, we had an event here. About 10 of his writers read their works, and the place was packed. They were so proud of what they'd written, so proud of being published, and they had all their friends and family and their teachers, and so we had like 80 people in here. Don't tell the fire marshal. It's the best of Cow Tipping Press. There's one called Please Fix 8 Mill Road. There's one over there called Taylor Swift and James Bond. Anyway, just some of it's very silly stuff, some of it's very touching. There was one woman who got up and she had a misshapen jaw, and she had written a poem about what it must feel like to be kissed, and it brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it, because it was so moving. That's been my favorite event, where we had that many people here excited about what they'd done.
Is there a reason why you chose this location for your business? I noticed that we were on the street called the Arts District of Minneapolis.
It was partly that, not just this street, but most of Northeast has been designated by the city as the Arts District.
Okay.
When I was looking for a spot, there wasn't a bookstore anywhere around here. There still isn't. And I was looking at, the bookstore is called Eat My Words because originally, when I formed the LLC, I was looking over on South Nicollet Avenue near the Art Institute and the art school over there on what's called Eat Street. And I thought, what a perfect name for a bookstore on Eat Street. It could be Eat My Words. Unfortunately, the space I was looking at was pretty lousy and the rent was pretty high, and so I never moved there. But I kept the name. Yeah, it's a good neighborhood. For better or for worse, it's a rapidly changing neighborhood. Lots of apartment buildings going up around here. It's becoming more of a city where it was just an old working class neighborhood that had been getting filled in by artists and art studios. My favorite is the Casket Art building in an old coffin factory. Just something cool about that. But yeah, there's a lot of factors, and a place was open. Not this. I was on the corner here for the first 3 years. There's all those factors as part of it.
Do you work with any local artists or authors?
Yeah, I mean for the events and for bringing in their books to put in this section or the poetry section back here, which are for local authors. Our old location, our original location, we had room on the walls for artwork, and we're trying to find small pieces we can put like on the ends of the cabinets. One of the staff is working with local artists for something like that. And also we've also had recurring class for poetry performance for poets who have written something but don't present it very well, and a lot of them don't. They write it for the page and they don't know how to project, act even,
And then I've seen a lot of art and pottery pieces around here. Are these local artists?
It is one local artist, extremely local. The potter is the landlord, and his studio is right in back of the store. Before I moved in here, he and his wife ran a gift shop here that featured his pottery, but they wanted to move on to other things, and they're open like once a month. So when I moved in, we negotiated they would have one corner, and I sell their stuff, and it's all part of the negotiation for what the rent would be and things like that. So yeah, and he's a good potter, so it's great.
Is there any specific book that has changed your life or the way you think?
I would say really the first one that got me was like when I was in high school, and I read Catch-22, the anti-war, anti-corporate, with a great sense of humor and a very hopeful ending. That's probably the single book that has done the most to change who I was and what, or to confirm what I was thinking, as much more than change it, but to like solidify it. I get ideas from everything I read.
I've tried reading that book once, and it was very hard for me to understand, but I've heard that it's a really good satire of how our world works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What books do you recommend for teens or high schoolers in general?
That's hard because everybody's an individual. The level, both of their reading ability plus their social thinking, where they are in dealing with sex and violence and political thoughts and all these other possibilities. I would generally recommend classics like Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, John Steinbeck, who was also a big influence on me when I was a teenager. And then you really have to talk to somebody to find out what might fit. I mean, there's young adult books, you can move back and forth, but everybody's different as to when they're ready to take on the classics or other good modern novels. And then there's, some high school students are up for reading, say, Nietzsche or, some other philosopher, and others aren't.
What role do you think literature plays in adolescence?
I think the main thing, and this is from what I've seen here, I have two kids, they're 28 and 31, and for what it did to me is the way it can expand the worlds that you see. Now you can get some of that from watching movies, TV, or whatever too, but there's something about a book written by somebody your age in Africa, Anne Frank diary or other World War II books like that, and from any time, whether it's the person who wrote it or somebody who researched it, and to show you a different world, and to show you how that affected the way somebody's thinking and feeling things. It can get into a lot more depth than a movie will, because it can move you along inside their minds, all the different possible ways of being and ways of thinking that are outside your own family and school and yourself. That to me is the importance of it.
What does the power of literature mean to you? Which is a kind of similar question.
Yeah, so I won't answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And we're just talking really about fiction here, but it's also true with memoirs in particular, but with other books, and where you're not just learning the facts. I read a book about the American Civil War and what inspired people to be willing to die for not even themselves, dying to free the slaves when you're a white guy, and what all the factors were where they would go in knowing they were going to die. It was just, there was a real good chance, or get their arm blown off or whatever. How could you do that? What kind of background would you have to have? And what kind of thoughts are going through your head that this is the right thing to do? That's not fiction. And, it's, but yeah, some guy had done a lot of research on the religion of the times and things like that.
How does literature/knowledge shape community and people in general?
going back to the previous answer, if you can understand better where somebody else is coming from, what their background is and how it shapes their thoughts, then you can get along with them better. A community doesn't have to all be people who think the same, but if they can at least appreciate why somebody thinks different, it's not just because they're stupid, you know. It's not just ignorance, it's because here's where they're coming from, and here's, you know. And I think that's what a community has to be, is people understanding each other.
I think that's a big part of growing up as well, is trying to understand how people's own history has impacted their own points of view. And I think literature can, and just stories in general, can really help bring someone's life to life.
Mm-hmm. And then you can work with them to address a problem. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you seen your store build its own community?
Yes, definitely. Partly through the events. I mean, the people don't come in as a community, you know, they come in one or two at a time usually, but they tell each other about it, which is the best form of me getting the word out about the store, is the word of mouth. But there is definitely a community here. I mean, I love this story. This just happened this Sunday. Two groups of two women each. They're both like, all four of them were like early grad school, came in Sunday. And two of them sat here and two of them sat over there. And they got to talking, and by the end of it, they were exchanging phone numbers. And one of them was going to move out of town, and her friend was going to buy her a tattoo, and was thinking of, she tells the others, I'm thinking of getting her like a plus sign and a minus sign. And one of the other women says, oh, you mean like this? And shows hers. It was beautiful. It's just great. So yeah, people can meet here. But a lot of introverts, you know, not all, but so people don't like, and I'm glad they don't, interfere with each other while they're shopping. But there is a sense of community, knowing that somebody else shops at the same store, and then as I said, then there's the events as well.
And do you have any just general advice for high school students?
Find a good balance between reading and doing. You got to have both, and relate the two. So when you're doing something, think about how that reflects on something you're reading. When you're reading, what that reflects your life or doesn't reflect your life at all. Go out and have adventures, and write them down. I don't know.
It's a weird question.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, it was really nice talking to you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for answering our questions. I think this was really eye-opening for us as well.
Good, cool. That one great.
Very exciting. Another closed door.